You might hear him in the background a little bit because he's sitting right by my feet. My son was born a month ago today. I have been wanting to share this because I just kind of want to explain and share my experience, mostly because I hope that it can help other women to really manage their expectations when it comes to their birth. I was very close-minded, I guess, and I was close-minded in the sense of I never ever considered what a C-section would be like. I never even had an open mind about, I had an open mind about medication, I guess. If I had to be induced, I understood that it was going to be a lot more painful. I was very close-minded about a C-section. I never even watched a C-section video. If they came up on my Instagram, I would quickly scroll past them because they terrified the life out of me. They were just so scary, and I'm not afraid of blood. I have no problem with blood, but the thought of a C-section just horrified me. I was in labor for 50 hours altogether. I guess like early labor included. If you watched my Instagram story, I was in labor for 50 hours altogether. I guess like early labor included. I just want to make sure to take a minute to say thank you to everyone that reached out while I was in labor. I obviously couldn't really respond during that time, and then their messages were still just pouring in afterwards. I got like probably hundreds of messages from people, just words of encouragement, people asking what happened, people just praying for us, and I so much appreciate every single person that reached out. Even if I wasn't able to respond, there were quite a few people. I am not the type of person that likes to read a message and just not respond, but I was just not in a place where I could go through and respond to every single person. But anyway, I'm so thankful that I took notes during my labor. I had no idea that I would be in the hospital for a total of 6 days, but I took notes during from as soon as I got there until he was born, basically. And so I'll go ahead and just start because this is probably going to end up being a pretty long video. Like I said, it was a total of 50 hours that I was in labor. So just brace yourself. It might be a long video. I also want to just kind of give everyone a heads up. I do still kind of have a hard time talking about this. I don't know what it is. I have fully accepted what happened. I think it's just a hormonal thing. I'm so thankful that my son's here and he's been completely healthy. He was never in danger during my labor. I think it's just things went so differently than I had hoped. So I think I just still have a hard time accepting what happened. So my plan originally, I had no intentions of getting induced. I wanted a natural, unmedicated birth. I wanted to push standing up. I wanted to have like this whole natural, peaceful environment. I hired a doula. My husband had worked with me and my doula to learn all the techniques he had to do. My best friend is a photographer, and she was there to take pictures. So I had everything planned. Technically it was past my due date when I went in. I went on the 29th, Tuesday, and had my appointment. They just kind of did a check. I had my membrane swept, and I had been on monitoring. I talked about it in my last video, but basically I had elevated blood pressure for the last few appointments that I had, and they had some slightly irregular labs, but they weren't really a big deal. So she was saying if I had not had the baby by Friday, that she thought that induction was definitely an option, and I wasn't going to take the option. I would never go more than probably like 10 days overdue, but I really didn't want to be induced. I've heard that it's a lot more painful, and I just had a really bad feeling about it. So I wasn't going to take that if I had the option of not being induced. So on the 29th, and it was my doctor, and she was basically really concerned. I guess that my labs had come back irregular again. I had had one set come back irregular, then I had a set that was normal, and then this set was irregular again. So she basically said, you have to go to the hospital and get induced, like, right now. And so I asked her, you know, what are my options? If could I wait a few more days and see if he comes out on his own, or, you know, what's the risk? And she was like, basically, if you don't go today, like, you could lose your baby. So obviously, it's my first baby. I'm freaked out. I had no idea what to do. So we I messaged my doula. She looked at my labs and she was like, honestly, yeah, you're probably gonna have to just go get induced. So doctor called at 2:30. We finally left the house at 5:15, and then we got to the hospital and we were admitted at 8 p.m. I think we got there at 7:30, and I was admitted at 8. I was put in my room. I was in my room and everything. They started my fluids and Pitocin. It was about 2.5, 3 centimeters. So at 8:45, that's where I was. That's where I was at my last appointment as well, so I hadn't progressed at all. By midnight, my Pitocin was at a level 5, so I guess the highest that it goes is 20. So it goes pretty high. By 2 a.m., my Pitocin was at a level 8. The doctor checked me. I hadn't dilated at all. At 3 a.m., they told me to try to sleep, which was kind of a joke because not that the contractions were that bad at this point, but definitely bad enough to not be able to sleep through. I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to sleep through this. Dozed off for like 40 minutes on and off. So at 3:45, I woke up, had a lot stronger contractions, and then I couldn't lay down or relax. It was pretty painful after that. They upped my Pitocin again up to a level 10, and that was at 3:45. By 4:30, the contractions started dying out again, so they told me to try to rest. I swear I was asleep for a few hours. My mom said she thinks I was just like really delirious because she's like, I'm pretty sure you slept for like 30 minutes, maybe. So I don't know. At 7:15, I woke up. My Pitocin was at level 15, so it's like 75% of what they are able to give me. And by 9 a.m., nothing had happened. Contractions would start getting stronger and closer together, and then they would die out. Like, my body was just not really responding to Pitocin very well. That was at 7:15. By 9 a.m., they decided to take me off the Pitocin and give me a break. So I got an hour to walk around, to eat, kind of basically just start over because nothing was happening. And one of my good friends was actually in the recovery side with her baby that she had just had, so I got to go over and see them, kind of just like refresh. And at 10 a.m., we started intermittent monitoring. So they would come in, I believe I'd have to be on the monitor for 20 minutes. Then they would take it off. I would have 40 minutes off. I could walk around, do whatever I wanted, and then get back on. And this was when they started Cervidil, or I guess it's also called Cytotec. So for this, I took a pill every 4 hours, and I ended up having 5 of those. So I was on this Cytotec for 20 hours. So 10 a.m. I started that. 11:45 I took a shower. I was having a little bit of contractions. Kind of tried to like move around, dance in the shower. I walked and like did squats all over the hallway. Nothing was happening. At 2 I had my second Cervidil dose. Contractions were a little bit more steady. By 6 p.m. we started kind of trying to calm down. My doula said that she thought that maybe we should try to have less visitors and just have kind of me and Chase just dim the lights and relax and try to focus on the contractions. She was saying mentally I can kind of encourage the contractions to get stronger. So we tried that. Didn't really work. And then 8:20, the contractions finally started getting stronger again. So this is the 24-hour mark since I had been admitted. I was checked. Again, I still hadn't really progressed. Not much had happened. So I was getting super discouraged at this point because I had been awake for well over 24 hours. I was exhausted and I had not dilated at all. 8:20, my contractions started getting stronger. I was kind of just laying there. I was so tired, so I was trying to rest. But obviously I couldn't sleep through it, so I was just kind of laying there. I would get up every once in a while. At 11:45, the nurse was actually in my room checking things, and my water broke. And my doula had gone home. I told her that she should go home and rest because I had been there for so long. And really, for the most part, Chase was able to handle like all the support because I wasn't in that much pain yet. Once my water broke, I think it was a combination of the massive amount of induction medication that I had been given. But my water broke, and the first contraction that hit me, my legs were like giving out. There was no way I could handle it. I was so exhausted. So at this point, it was almost midnight. I had been awake since about 7 or 8 a.m. 2 days before that. So I had been awake I was awake for like 40 hours at this point, without really sleeping. And I was exhausted. So I could kind of tell as soon as my water broke that my biggest fear was happening. I always kind of had a bad feeling that if I got induced, that I always was confident that I could handle the pain if I wasn't induced, but if I was induced, I was pretty terrified that the pain was just going to be too much. As soon as that first contraction hit me after my water broke, my legs were like shivering. My whole body was shaking. I was trying to go to the bathroom and clean myself because my water had... Oh, hold on. Well, he has a little mood lightener. My little buddy. Waking up. Hi. You waking up? Oh. Hi. Well, this is him. My little buddy. I think I'm going to have to finish this video while nursing, so hold tight. Anyway, so as soon as the contractions started, I'm guessing it was kind of a combination probably of how horribly exhausted I was, and also the fact that I had been pumped with all these induction medications and hormones for like 30 hours at this point. So basically, as soon as those started hitting, well, as soon as my water broke, Chase texted my doula and told her that my water had broken. Chase texted her. She was coming. So 11:45 was when my water broke. Pretty much right away, my contractions were back to back. I would have like I had one contraction, and then I was like, okay, I feel like I need to like clean myself because I had like the fluid all over. So I like got up before I could even make it to the bathroom. I was having another one. They were like so close together. I had really like no chance to even breathe or like gather my thoughts in between. Pretty much told Chase right away. I had told Chase that I absolutely didn't want the epidural. Even maybe if I had gotten induced, I still really didn't want it. I was going to try to do whatever I could to avoid it. And I pretty much like 2 contractions in, I was like, hell no, there's no way, because I was just way too exhausted. He was like, okay, let's just try to like get through this. Well, let's wait till Natalie gets here. I think she got there pretty quick, within like 30-40 minutes. And by the time she got there, I was screaming through every contraction. And every contraction was basically all the time. I tried massage, we tried like all of the stuff that we had practiced, and there was literally no way. And finally, I was telling Chase, I was like, I need it. There's no way that I'm going to make it through this, because I was in so much pain and I could not even gather my thoughts in between. There was nothing peaceful about it at this point. And I think because I had been awake for so long, there was just no way. So I finally, my nurse had kind of a similar thing happen to her, and I asked her, she had planned on having an unmedicated birth with her son. So I asked her if when she had her son and she got her epidural, if she was able to rest after that. And she said yes, absolutely. She said after she got hers, she basically fell asleep and she woke up and she was at 10, and then she had her baby. So I was considering that. I was just in a world of pain, and Chase was still kind of trying to cheer me on. I was trying so hard to stick with him, and we had watched a lot of stuff. Like, if there's a movie called The Business of Being Born, kind of just talks about how all these medical interventions can often lead to more issues. So he was really bummed that I was starting to go down that road, and the nurse said that, and then finally I couldn't even stand. I was in so much pain, and I was so weak and so tired. And at that point, I laid on the bed, and Chase was just kind of holding my head and trying to help me breathe through everything. And in the like 5 seconds that I had in between each contraction, I, in my mind, was falling asleep. But he ended up admitting to me later he didn't really want to freak me out, but I wasn't falling asleep. I was passing out. My eyes were literally rolling backwards in my head. My body was just giving up. My blood pressure was like, I think 190 over 120. It was insanely high. And obviously it's painful to begin with. So who knows, it's my first kid. I have no idea how painful it would have been without all that. But there was no way. My body just couldn't handle it anymore. So I told the nurse that without even like consulting with Chase, I told the nurse, get the anesthesiologist, because there's no way. And that was probably when I think we realized that things were really going downhill, because I turned over and I looked at Chase, and he was just crying, because I know that he knew how badly I wanted things to go differently, and that was really when we knew that things were probably, they weren't going how we wanted. I pretty much was pretty convinced that not having an epidural would help me have a quicker recovery, and he knew what I was giving up and just how badly I wanted that. After I asked for it, I was just apologizing. So anyway, by 1 o'clock, I got my epidural, and thank God I was able to fall asleep. I fell asleep. I had like the shakes after I got it, pretty bad, but I fell asleep, I think probably within like 10 minutes. 6 a.m. they came in to check me, and I was finally at 5 centimeters. So I had finally made some type of progress. I went back to sleep, and at 8:15, I woke up. They brought me some broth and all that. I couldn't eat it. I ate it, but it all came back up. And then at 9:15, I was at 8 centimeters. At 2:40, they came in, and I was finally at 10 centimeters, but they said that I needed to wait to kind of let my body get ready, I guess, at 5. So I had like 2.5 hours sitting there waiting. And they came in at 5 and said that it was time to practice push. And those just turned into regular pushes. So it was just the nurse. I had really, really awesome nurses my whole entire crazy amount of time that I was there. So by the time I started pushing, I had been there for about 45 hours. So nurses change every 12 hours. I'd have a lot of nurses. And the nurse that I had when I was actually, the nurse that was there when I was actually delivering was not that great. She kind of just sat there and stared at the monitor, didn't really give me any direction, other than she yelled at me to stop pumping my epidural up because she said my pushes weren't productive enough. But about 40 minutes into what we said was practice pushing, they could already see his head. We had one doctor come in and check around then, and she was all excited. She was like, yeah, you're gonna have this baby like really soon, you're almost there. And she took her gloves off and she left. So that was weird. The time is like totally a blur to me. So I started pushing at 5. My doctor that ended up being my final doctor, I want to say she came in around 8:30, and so I had been pushing for 3.5 hours, and I could tell she was a little concerned. She was kind of like, what the heck? I had no idea how long it had been. I had no grasp of time at this point. So I had just, I mean, I had a lot of support. My husband was right there. My mom was there, my doula, and my friend Carrie was in there taking pictures, and everyone was just so supportive. I mean, it was awesome because even though it sounds so horrible, the pushing part, everyone feels so bad when they hear that I pushed for a total of 4.5 hours, but honestly, I had so much support, and just the love that I felt from everyone that was there for me was so helpful. If there's one thing that I can recommend, I know people say, you know, you don't want a ton of people in the room or whatever, but if there's people that you know are going to make you feel comfort and love, it's okay to have people there, because that's honestly what got me through it. Especially my husband did so well. My mom was there. My best friend was there. She was really just supposed to be there to take pictures, but she was there holding my hand, and just that love and support that I had from everyone, it made a world of a difference for me. So the doctor came in around 8:30, and she was like, what the heck? His head has been in the same spot for like almost 3 hours. So something's up. At this point, we realized that his body, when I started, was all kind of like this, upside down. Like if my tips of my fingers or his feet, he was kind of like this on my right side of my stomach. At this point, he had kind of turned, and he was like that, I guess, on my left side. So when he descended, he somehow flipped himself around, and this was when she realized that he was posterior, or partially posterior. I guess basically the birth canal is kind of like this, and he was like this. He was like sideways. He wasn't completely backwards. So she came in. She realized that pretty quickly. It was kind of a bummer that no one else, I feel like the nurse really wasn't paying attention to anything. So it was kind of frustrating because it probably could have been realized a lot sooner. The doctor did what she could to try to turn him, and it wasn't happening. There was no way. Probably around 9:15 at night, so we're past the 48-hour mark now, they said that we could try to do a vacuum, and I was still really optimistic at this point. I was like, yeah, I just need that little extra push. You know, the vacuum's totally going to do it. She tried the vacuum once. He didn't move whatsoever. And at this point, I had started having a really horrible muscle spasm, I think it was, in my upper back, so the epidural didn't numb it. I have back problems in my upper back anyway, and my back was just done. I couldn't really lift my head. My body was just done. She was like, okay, let's try again, and I pushed seriously as hard as I could. My blood pressure, again, was like 190 over 120. I was just pushing so hard and literally giving it everything that I could. So at that point, for the first time in 4.5 hours, his heart rate did drop. So on the second vacuum, she said, I'm not going to try it a third time because he absolutely didn't budge either time, and we're just going to have to go ahead and prep you for surgery. So I stayed really calm, even though I was terrified. I mean, I never had even imagined that I would be in that position. But at this point, I just wanted him out. I just wanted him to be okay. And as soon as he showed any signs of distress, I obviously just wanted to do whatever I could. So they prepped me right away. So finally, around 10 o'clock, I made it into my C-section. That was when I got in the room. They did a second epidural, which now I'm really bummed. I had to have 3 different needles put into my spine because they gave me a new epidural. It didn't work, and then they had to give me a spinal block instead. I got the shakes really bad from this new epidural and from the spinal block or whatever it was, and I was shaking really bad. But and I was staying pretty calm on the outside just because I was so exhausted, but I was terrified on the inside, and I think that kind of started to get to me. They had to strap my arms down on this table. Both my arms were out like this, and I was just laying there, and my husband came in, and this is where it's going to get a lot harder to talk about, but my husband finally got to come in, and he was just sitting with me and trying to keep me calm. There wasn't really much I could do about the shaking, but with my first epidural, it wore off in about 10 minutes, but for some reason it wasn't wearing off this time, and I think that's because I was kind of panicking. When they started, this is going to get a little bit graphic, but I don't know if it's because I was uneducated about it or if I just had not as good of a reaction, but you can feel a lot of what they're doing in a C-section. So I said right away, I was like, I feel that. And he was like, well, does it hurt or is it just like pressure? And I was like, it kind of hurts, but like I can feel you cutting me. And he was like, oh, that's fine as long as it doesn't hurt like I'm cutting you. And I was like, okay, so I literally I heard and felt the scissors cutting across my stomach. And that definitely started to set me off more. I had stayed somewhat calm up until this point, and that was just terrifying. And then when they finally got in there and they were starting to pull him out, he was completely lodged into my pelvis. He was basically like this. His feet were up in my ribs and were stuck up there, and his head and shoulders were stuck in my pelvis. So they had to pull really hard to get him out. Like they were yanking like crazy, and like I said, I could feel pretty much all of it, even though it didn't hurt. It hurt a little. It was definitely very uncomfortable, but I could tell. I could probably explain exactly what they were doing as they were doing it because it was so real how much I could feel, and that was terrifying. So they were kind of yanking him up out of my pelvis, and then they finally pulled him out. And they were like, oh wow, no wonder he wasn't coming out. Like he was so stuck in there, and he's so big. He didn't end up being that big. He was 8'3", so a little bit bigger. But this is where things really started to go downhill for me. Luckily, he was out. He was perfectly fine. He was so strong the whole time. But they pulled him out. They showed him to me, and it was always kind of like my big plan was to do the skin to skin right away. And that's what I was looking forward to, and also to do like a delayed cord clamping. They cut his umbilical cord as soon as he came out. I'm sure that's like protocol. But the whole reason that I didn't ask to be put to sleep, I probably would have preferred to just be put to sleep. But I had hoped that I would still get to hold him right away. And I didn't. They took him out, and they showed him to me. And as they lifted him up, this was like kind of a little bit comical now, but super scary in the moment. A huge splash of blood just hit the little drape thing. And I thought they were going to give him to me, and they didn't. And they took him over to the little thing, and one of the nurses stood right so I couldn't see him. And he had been crying, but then he stopped. I think that was where I really lost it, because I thought that I was going to get to hold him, and I didn't. And so at that point, they started to try to take my placenta out, I believe is what they were doing. And the tugging was really bad. It was really painful when they did that, or really uncomfortable. And that's the last thing that I remember. My husband was still right next to me, so he was able to tell me everything else that happened. Because I was awake. I guess I blacked out. I was freaking out. I was shaking like an insane amount. And at this point, I think it was a panic attack, which I've never had before, but it was just shaking like crazy. I couldn't stop. There was nothing I could do to control it. They were telling my husband, like, oh, Dad, come see your baby. Like, don't you want to come check him, you know, cut his cord, whatever. Cut, like, the rest of his cord because they had already cut it. And he was like, well, is he okay? And they were like, yeah, he's fine, but, like, don't you want to come see him? And he's sitting there, like, bawling because I'm, you know, in this state. He was like, no, like, if you guys have him, I want to stay over here. And so I don't remember anything else past them taking him and starting to feel them take my placenta out. But according to Chase, after this, because I kind of was emotional for a while because I didn't get to hold my son until a lot of other people had held him. And my husband ended up explaining that I did actually hold him during that part where I was blacked out, I guess. My arms were strapped down, so I really didn't get to hold him. But I guess I was freaking out. I was like yelling and just not handling it well. My head was turned this way, and I guess that they came over and they laid Foster on like my shoulder over here and had Chase kind of hold him on me. And he said that I turned, and I was like, oh, hi, buddy. Like, what are you doing here? Or something like that. I don't remember any of this, so it's so weird. And I gave him a kiss, and then I think it kind of set back in. He said after that, I started freaking out again. I was shaking really bad and, like, basically screaming. And they ended up taking him back from me, and that was when they put a mask on me because I needed to be sedated. And Chase had to be taken out of the room because he's not allowed in the room once I'm unconscious. Because of things that had happened, he ended up having to leave. And I ended up waking up about 2 hours later in a random corner of, like, the OR. Luckily, there was a nurse right there, and she was super sweet. I woke up, and she was like, hey, honey. Like, she gave me some water, and she was like, you just have to stay with me until you can move your legs a little bit. I don't know why. Then I fell back asleep, ended up finally waking up and being able to move my legs enough to be taken back to the recovery floor. So finally, I think it was around like 2 a.m., they took me to the recovery room. They said that Chase and my son would be in there, and they weren't. I think I waited like 15 minutes or something. Just remember, like, when I first saw him and saw Chase after, I was so thankful that it was over, but I just knew that it was going to be really hard. The recovery was going to be hard. I knew that I was just going to have a lot of, not necessarily regret, but just sadness thinking about it. My doctor came in and checked on me in the morning when I woke up, and because of things with my labor, I think she was kind of trying to be discreet about it because she didn't want to freak me out, but I had a lot more serious treatment in my recovery than a lot of C-section women. But when she came in, I asked her, I was like, so when you went, during the surgery, do you think that we made the right call? Is there any way that I would have been able to go through? And she said, absolutely not. So there was absolutely no way that he was coming out without surgery. And basically, if I had been, back in the olden days or in an area where medical care wasn't around, I most likely would not have survived my labor. I'm so thankful that I had great doctors and they were awesome, but it definitely was scary. And I just hope that this can help other women, because now it's been a month. I'm going to post a whole video about the recovery and everything, because this video is just going to be way too long if I put it in this one. But it really didn't take me long to feel myself again. I felt like I was never going to feel okay when I first was recovering. But I am here to say that no matter how horrible your birth is, it is absolutely worth it. I don't want to say I wouldn't change a thing, because I absolutely wish that things would have gone different still. And I will always be bummed that it didn't go the way that I had hoped. And I'm bummed because it definitely could affect future children. If we have another one, it's probably going to change my birth for that one. We only want one more if we have another one. But I just hope that it can kind of help other women, not only to prepare for the worst, but just to understand that even if the worst does happen, it's so worth it in the end. I just really want it to be encouraging and to help women to just know that no matter how your labor goes, even if it seems like it's horrible in the moment, you're going to get through it and you're going to end up with the most amazing thing in your life afterwards. So if you sat through this whole entire video, thank you so much for watching it. Thanks for sitting with me while I fed my child and ugly cried for a long time. I have not had any signs of postpartum depression or anything like that, just because I know that I've been getting a ton of messages because people have been worried about me with that. But just so people know, I am totally happy now. I'm so happy. I feel so much better. I still have a lot of recovering to do, but I have come a long way. And yeah, thank you for everyone who has kind of followed our journey, and for all the words of encouragement and prayers and everything that we've gotten along the way. I'm so happy that we have a perfect, tough little boy now, and we are well on our way to recovery. Yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll probably be filming another video pretty soon about my recovery and kind of my personal experience and how I got through that. So yeah, so stay tuned for that video, and I'll see you guys next time.